concrete walls. There's a place for us where we could go, where we could be alone. Between city lights, we don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. I'm back. I seem to be saying that a lot lately. I'm back because I seem to be going places a lot lately. I guess that's good, right? Staying busy out there in the world doing things. Ghost Branch FPV says, we need a first live stream after a long break. Bingo, with things like messed up OBS scenes or Stream Deck needing an update. You shut up! You shut up. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be fine. Welcome to the stream. It is good to be back with you guys. It feels so weird when I go through a week and don't stream. Just sitting down, talking to you guys about FPV, answering your questions, and you just, getting that boost of self-esteem. That's why I do it. It's not the money. It's certainly not the fame. It's that boost of self-esteem when people show up and want you to help them. I guess not everybody feels that way. Some people just find it annoying. But not me. There you go. And that's what we're going to do. I'm going to try and help you with your questions. And some of you will watch me help other people with their questions. But that's what we're going to do. Steady Eddie. How's everybody? Everybody have a good time at I.O.? Of course you did, right? Of course you did. I.O. was amazing. I wasn't at I.O. I was doing some interesting stuff with some interesting people. But wasn't at I.O. with those interesting people. So good for you guys. Good for you guys. Glad you had some fun. I.O. is about, it's well known for racing. Of course, it's a big race, but there's it's just like, Bonnaroo for FPV pilots. I don't know if Bonnaroo is the exact right call, but it's a big, big event for everybody in FPV. Yeah, so I'm back, and I'm going to be taking your questions. Oh, wait, that doesn't count. That camera is off all the time. I turn that off for the news. That's normal. That's not on the Ghost Branch bingo card. Is my little corner cam being off. It doesn't count, Ghost Branch. You back off, sir. You back off. I'm going to be taking your questions here in the YouTube chat. And by I'm going to be taking your questions, I mean Blunty. Blunty's going to be helping me out by queuing up your questions. How are you doing, Blunty?
Good. How's it going, Joshua?
Good, good. Very glad to be back here with you. Yeah, we figured out a little while back that it's, I often miss questions while I'm talking for minutes at a time. And it would be great, as many shows have figured out, right, Blunty? Many call-in shows. It helps to have a producer/call screener. And that's you today. Yeah. I feel like it's really improved the live streams. I mean, I'm just going to be blunt. I think the quality of the streams is better with you helping. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. I think we're doing better. I think it's going good. We got all kinds of questions coming in. And we're happy to take your questions out there.
Yeah. Every so often, you're like, no, you're wrong. You're like, hey, actually this other thing, and you tell me something I didn't know. Or you're like, actually, you misread that guy's question, and the thing you've been talking about for the last 2 minutes has no relationship to what the guy actually said. And I'm like, wow, glad you were here.
Yeah. Yep. Not a Bird says AI plugins will be able to filter questions. Yes, but they can't provide corrections live in the show, at least yet.
Well, and also and I'm just going to be blunt about this. Here's what I'm going to say. I was going to say some questions are better than others, and that's actually a little insulting. All questions, the person who's asking them wants the answer to the question, and that has value for that person. What I will say is some questions make better live stream content than others. And you are good at filtering for the questions that because our goal here is to answer questions. But if all you want to do is for me to answer your questions, just email me. And by the way, I had a guy leave a YouTube comment, and he said, "Can I email you?" And I was like, thank you, that's polite of you, but yes, anyone can email me. jb@joshuabardwell.com is my email, and anyone's welcome to email me, and I do my best to answer as many of the emails. I try to answer all of them. Not everyone is answerable. So, but I do my best to answer them because I know. But if you want to do live stream content, the questions need to be entertaining and interesting. And so, good to have you, Blunty. We're going to be taking those questions here in the YouTube chat. We're going to be taking those questions in the live stream chat as well. That is my Discord server, and these are my patrons. If you want to join my Discord, you can get over there. And we're also going to be reading your super chats. If you guys want to hit the $sign and leave a super chat in just a little bit, I will be going through those. We've got just a couple of them queued up already. And there we go. So let's get into it. Richard Warwick says, yeah, just don't mention remote ID. Man, Botgrinder really kicked off a frickin', didn't he? I'm going to give him credit, although I should probably give XJet credit as well. XJet, here's the difference, though. XJet has been screaming about remote ID. He just has constantly been doing it. Whereas Botgrinder dropped this video, which was like, just say no to remote ID or something like that. I don't remember the exact title. And then and in that video, he explicitly said people need to be making more content about this. And it seems like that had an effect because I've seen so many videos about remote ID in the last week or so. And I was like, well, on some level, like I feel like, I've made content about remote ID. And, I've said the things that I feel like I have to say about it. And then Botgrinder says, hey, people should be making content about remote ID. And then everybody starts making remote ID content. And the YouTuber in me is like, oh, I don't want to look like I'm don't care or I'm left out. you know. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, I mean, I feel like I've said the things I have to say. I don't want to look like I'm just jumping on the bandwagon for clicks. But I did get some interesting responses to my comments and we're not going to do another 45-minute remote ID rant for those of you who are like, oh my God, here he goes again. I did get some interesting responses to my comments on Bachgrinder's video and on my 45-minute rant about remote ID, which also included a small rant about XJet. And some of the comments were like, what have you done? At least he's doing something. And I thought, my first thought was, what do you mean, what have I done? I've done plenty. And I actually wrote a comment where I like argued with this person, listing all of the things I've done to help fight remote ID. And then because there's a thing I've learned, and that is that you could be summed up by saying, don't whine at your customers. Okay? As a business, never whine at your customers. If your customer says, this product is too expensive, and you reply by going, yeah, but it costs a lot of money for me I have to rent the trucks, and the employees need insurance, and those things are true. Your customer doesn't give a fuck. Your customer sees the value that they get for the product, and they see what you're asking them to pay, and they say, and so you could say, well, I understand. Okay, that's my price. I appreciate it if that's not, a good deal for you, and maybe we can't do business. But you never whine at your customers, because that's not a way to win them over. You could try to convince them that there's more value. Maybe. I don't know. When it comes to YouTubers, your customers are your viewers. And I try, although I don't always succeed, to never whine at my viewers. When viewers say things critical of my videos, I can say, well, I don't agree, or I think you're wrong, or, whatever. But don't whine at them and be like, it's hard to be a YouTuber, or whatever. It's just degrading. So to say, what do you mean what have I done about remote ID? I did so much. I put out these videos and I did this thing, and either it's not going to convince you. Either you think that's enough or you don't. Whining about it's not going to change that. So I thought, if there is some number of people out there who think, what has Bardwell done about remote ID? Either they're just out of touch. No, the children are wrong. Right? Either they're just don't know and they're out of touch, or I need to do more because apparently I haven't done enough lately enough that people have noticed. So we'll see about that. That's all I have to say about that, I think. Never whine at your customers. Let's see. Blenty, did you queue any comments or questions specifically related to that before we move on?
Well, you asked not to go on a 45-minute rant. If I queue questions, you're going to go on a 45-minute rant. So we could do that.
Fair. That's fair. All right.
Okay.
I am thinking about what content I can make about remote ID, because I did take it to heart. At first, I wanted to argue about all the things that I made. Okay, just between you and me, Livestream. I made a feature-length documentary film. And the thrust of the film was, FPV is awesome and you should love it, and remote ID threatens it. One of the major reasons I made that, and I say I paid money for James to go around the country and record interviews and edit the film. James made the film. I just put up the money. So I made the film, but I participated in making this film specifically because I wanted to get the word out about FPV being awesome and remote ID being a problem. I have almost 40 grand in this film, and trust me, I haven't made it back, and I don't care. But like the part of me that wants to whine and argue, when somebody says, what have you done? XGen is out there making videos and fighting the fight. I'm like, son of a bitch, I have like 40 grand in this film that I thought would, now it didn't work out that way. It didn't get on Netflix. And by the time it got on Amazon Prime, it was like 2 years after it really would have been helpful to have people fighting for us. So like, I'm not saying it was successful in stopping remote ID. I'm proud of it. It's a good film. Just, how could, they must not know. And if they don't know, that means I need to do more. That's the takeaway. The Flow State film is on Amazon Prime. It finally got on Amazon Prime. So, all right. Let's take questions. It was only a 15-minute rant. And you know what? I'm going to take, there's like 2 super chats that came in before we could queue them up. And I want to get these super chats out of the way so they don't get lost. And the first one is from Jonah, which is a $10. I can't put it on screen because it didn't get queued up because it came in before the queue started. Let me take a $10 super chat from Jonah, who asks, do the Integra goggles have a way to spectate? Does the USB-C have video out to get the image on my phone, etc.? Can't find a definitive answer. So Jonah, both the Goggles 2 and the Integra, if you are using an O3 Air unit, Blunty, do you know if the DJI Fly app works with the Vista, assuming the Vista has been updated to bind to the Goggles 2 and the Integra? I would think it does.
I don't know for sure, but I would think it does as well because the recording turns into the same style recording that records the screen. Okay. So I think it would.
So if you have a USB-C to USB-C, you can plug the goggles into your phone and use the DJI Fly app to get a video screen. You can also go into, I think it's in transmission menu, and there is an option to start broadcast. And if you enable broadcast, then they can be spectated as well. So yes, they can spectate. Matt confirms that it also works with the Vista. Again, this is if you are on the V2 or the Integra goggles.
No, G2 or Integra goggles.
Thank you, Blunty. The naming of those goggles is atrocious. It's the Goggles 2 or the Integra, not the V2. If you have the V2 goggles, you can also spectate with other V2 goggles. Now, here's a question, Blunty. If I have a Goggles 2 with an O3 Air unit and it's broadcasting, can I tune in audience mode with a V2 goggles in O3 mode? Do we know?
I don't know the answer. Maybe chat can tell us.
Maybe a subject for a video to test out those permutations. That would be an interesting video. Okay. We'll get that super chat. I also want to acknowledge Blizzard FPV, who left us a $2 super chat. A toonie for the cause. Thank you for the $2 super chat. And I think we are... Yeah, I think we're caught up now on the super chats, and we'll take some more regular chats. Elmo Hawk wants to know, is the Mob 7 a good choice with walk snail for a whoop? Elmo Hawk, the Mobula 6 and Mobula 7 are widely believed, not just by me, but like maybe I'm wrong, but I think a lot of people feel that the Mob 6 and Mob 7 are a really solid choice for a bind and fly tiny whoop. Some would say the best. That doesn't mean they're perfect. Like everything in this hobby, sometimes you get a bad one. Sometimes the durability is not what you would prefer. And oftentimes, if you have strong feelings like some people have really strong feelings about motor KV, you might go, oh, well, I might replace the motors. But in general, I think it's very safe to say that the Mob 6 and the Mob 7 are a solid bind and fly choice. I think the Walk Snail 1S VTX is also an extremely good choice for people who want to do digital in a tiny whoop platform, and that the Mob 7 is the 75mm platform is going to give you just that little bit more power to handle just that little bit more weight of the 1S VTX. Now, I'm generalizing a lot because I don't have specific experience with this whoop. So if the chat is popping up right now and saying, no, the Mob 7 walk snail version has a problem, don't buy it, then we would have to, acknowledge that. I don't know if that's happening right now. But in general, I think you say Mobula 7, I'm like, yeah, that's solid. Walk snail 1S VTX, I'm like, yeah, that's solid. I like it. Now, I do want to say, I have flown the Rotor Riot Vision 40, and I know I keep harping on this, and I have been extremely impressed with it. Let's see if I can find a listing for the Mob 7 walk snail. $215. What motors? That's what I'm curious about. Is what motors does it have? 1002. Oh, it's a very similar formula. Okay, so this is a very similar formula with the 1002 motors and the 20,000 kV. I think the Rotor Riot has only 16,000 kV. Okay, so I feel like that's a similar formula, and I've been very happy with the way the Vision 40 flies. So I think it's probably going to fly pretty well too. Price-wise, $255, $214. They're kind of similar price-wise. So, yes, I think that's a really solid choice if you're looking for... oh, I'm sorry. 22K on the Rotor... Oh, it's 16,000 kV on the 2S, isn't it? Thank you for that correction, Morton Upshot. Appreciate that correction. Yeah. No, you're right, 22,000 kV. So they're going to be very similar. We have to check the weight, but I think they're going to be very similar. The Happy model is a little cheaper. Seems like they're probably going to fly pretty similar, though. The Rotor Riot, does the Rotor Riot come with a BT connector? That would be a real plus. I can see the Happy model has a PH connector, which is just pathetic. Sorry, Happy model. Do better. Okay. What are the best frames for a sub 250 gram 3-inch to 4-inch walk snail build? Well, I mean, I think the AOS 3-inch is solid. And definitely going to get you under 250 grams. That's going to take you up to 3.5-inch. Let's see. That's my first thought. I think that many of the downsides of the AOS frame, which is that it's like not the most durable, I think when you get down to the sub 250 category, they're alleviated because with that small amount of weight, you don't have as much energy going into a crash. The Apex Micro 3-inch is a really solid choice. We're looking right here at the fpvknowitall.com, which is my website. My website, fpvknowitall.com. And I always refer to my own website, which has the ultimate FPV shopping list on it. I kind of made this website, number one, because people are always asking me, hey, what do you recommend? And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I just had a website that had all my recommendations in one place? But also so that I can remember, because sometimes I don't remember off the top of my head certain categories. And in fact, I've even had other people come in, like Ciati. Ciati worked a lot on the Tinywhoop page because he knows more about Tinywhoops than I do. And so if you're looking for product recommendations, check out fpvknowitall.com. Put a link here in the chat. Why not? So as far as frames go, Quadmula Siren F3 split I have up here. The QAVS Mini 3-inch is an okay frame, but it's a little heavier. You'll still get under 250 grams with a 3-inch. But we'd have to make sure that these frames are going to hold the Walk Snail VTX. But if it's the 1S VTX, I think you're going to be fine. So those are some suggestions. Rauk FPV wants to know why I don't have a long-range category. Rauk, it is essentially impossible to do long-range legally in the United States. And I'm not willing. I'm not like I don't like have a deep love for long range. Like if I loved long range and was passionate about it, I might try to find a way to do it without getting in legal trouble. But I don't have a deep abiding passion for long range, and it's difficult. It's impossible to do it legally. You need BVLOS waivers, and they're essentially impossible to get for normal people. And here's the thing. It is much more difficult to have plausible deniability about long-range stuff, at least from my perspective. So, if I post a video on my channel and I'm flying around my yard, right, some people might say, well, does Bardwell have a spotter there? Does he have his line of sight to his drone at all times? And these are questions that are difficult to decisively answer yes or no under some circumstances. There's enough ambiguity. What was the date of this flight? No one knows. So there are cases where there's enough ambiguity that I don't feel like... And it is possible to do it legally, right? Whereas BVLOS, long-range flights, it is not possible to even have plausible deniability that you're doing it legally. Whereas flying around my yard, I could be doing it legally. I am doing it legally, as far as you know. And if you suspect that I'm not doing it legally, you don't actually have proof, probably. Fingers crossed. So with the combination of not having a deep abiding passion for long range and the difficulty of doing it without getting in trouble, without painting a target on your back, means that I don't go long range. Fortune says, we just refer to our footage as something we found on an SD card in the field. It's extremely tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, Fortune, that reminds me, for those of you who, I'm going to reveal things about my past here. You remember back on Project Blue Light, where everybody referred to someone who isn't me, Swim? Project Blue Light was, maybe still is, I don't know, a forum about drugs. Sorry, kids. Cover your ears, kids. And people would ask questions about drugs, and they would say, someone who isn't me wants to know about blah, 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 blah. And they were trying to maintain plausible deniability, and it was all silly. It was just silly. So, that's the FPV equivalent of, I found an SD card. I'm not sure how much that actually protects you. Right? I'm not sure how much that actually protects you, though. Anyway. Okay. Bob Wyatt wants to know FCC hack for goggles, V2 goggles on 0107. Bob, as far as I know, well, first of all, the FCC hack is done on the air unit, not the goggles. The 1200 milliwatt hack is done on the goggles. So if you're trying to put the FCC hack on the goggles, that's why it's not working. The FCC hack goes on if it's a full-size air unit, it goes on an SD card, it goes in the SD card reader. If it's a Vista, then it goes in the USB drive that pops up when you power up the Vista plugged into USB. It works on, there has never been a firmware for which the FCC hack doesn't work, though. No one has ever, the DJI has never locked it out, so it should be working. Luca Torno wants to know, how can I flash an Express LRS receiver stuck in bootloader mode? The answer to that question, Luca, is either use an FTDI adapter or some other similar serial programming adapter, or use Betaflight pass-through, although Betaflight pass-through is quirky to get working right. And so the safest thing to do is to desolder it and use an FTDI adapter. I do want to show you this. I want to show you. Why can I not find it? There we go. Is this it? I want to show you this. This is the Beta FPV Express LRS recovery dongle. It is essentially an FTDI, or sorry, it's a CP210. No, FTDI. Is CP210 the same thing as FTDI? I don't think they are. Do you have an opinion about that, Blunty?
I don't know.
Okay. I think they're just keyword stuffing here. I don't think CP210 and FTDI are the same thing. I think they're actually two different things that solve the same problem. But anyway, my point is this. This is essentially a serial programming adapter, but it comes with a nice little pin header here that easily stuffs onto an ELRS receiver. And if you have a receiver stuck in bootloader mode, this is probably, I feel so weird, like highly recommending a beta FPV product because a lot of times they're flaky. But this is one of the easiest ways to flash an ELRS receiver in bootloader mode. And it's $12 if we search for an FTDI adapter. Okay, you can get a cheap FTDI adapter for $6 or $7, but then you're also going to need to like rig up a wire header, and it's going to be a pain in the ass. And to me, this is actually a pretty freaking good deal because it just is ready to go. So if you don't have one, this is what I'd suggest you get. If you do have one, Mr. Huggy says CP210 is the chipset, FTDI is the protocol. Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
There's also an Arduino FTDI chipset. So I don't know. It's very confusing if you actually look it up. Because Arduino has an FTDI 2232 chipset. Or there's CP210 chipset. So
if FTDI is the protocol, then this could be the serial to USB chip. And then FTDI is the proto. I don't really know, though. Maybe, yeah, okay. Bottom line, if you don't have one, I suggest the Beta FPV Recovery dongle. It's pretty solid. Okay, it's about a half hour into the stream, and it's time to do the Super Chats. We've got about 5 or 10 Super Chats queued up, and what I like to do is right around the half-hour mark, I start reading Super Chats, and I keep going until we have no more Super Chats. So, if you would like to get a question answered promptly, this is the time to do it. And by promptly, I mean currently you are number 10 in the queue, but I will get to you. If you want to leave a Super Chat, now's the best time to do it, although, of course, you can leave them anytime you want. We're going to finish these out, and then we'll go back to answering the questions that don't have dirty money associated with them. Quadam FPV says, I bought the SkyZone Cobra X V2. How can I tell if I have the updated board? Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, yeah. I'm trying to look if there's like a version number. I think, Blunty, I remember when they released the receiver module, the updated receiver module, and it had like some kind of version marker on it. We talked about it on the news, but I'm blanking on the details. You want version, that's it. You want version 3.3. Is that it? Version 3.3? Let's see. SkyZone SteadyView receiver. I'm trying to get information about the versions of the SteadyView receivers. And I'm looking at the chat to see. Pacific Northwest says that the V2 Cobra goggle does have the updated board. Peter Sovis says, open up the receiver. It should say V33 on top. Yeah. If you have... How to tell the... Thank you. Well done. Great. Thank you for Machine Head here. How to tell the hardware version. In Settings System Menu, Firmware version, you should see the firmware version, and here is the answer. If it starts with 139, it means V1 hardware. 239 means V2 hardware. 339 means V3 hardware. That's a best answer there, Machine Head. I owe you 3 of those $5 for helping me answer the question. Good luck collecting. Thank you for your help, though. That is the answer. Next up, we have a question from OTR Flyer who asks... OTR Flyer asks, thank you for a $10 super chat, OTR Flyer. I've ordered all the parts for my 8S build. Oh, no. Big mistake. I bought a new charger and parallel board, so I'm vested. Just wondering, did you have to pin tune your build? No! OTR Flyer. Shockingly, I did not. And this is interesting because Bubby, I keep mixing up Blunty and Bubby's names. Sorry about that, Blunty. Bubby said that his, like, he'd had to turn his master multiplier way down. I flew mine on the defaults. I fully expected it to fly to the moon and flip out and not fly right, and it flew fine. It flew fine. Betaflight 4.4, I hardly know what to say. Yep. It worked. Now, I would take that carefully. Like, the first time you hover it, do it somewhere where you expect it to freak out and fly to the moon. Be very careful. You know, like, there's a set of things I do when I've got a build that is, I'm not convinced it won't have problems. So, like, I will arm, and I'll very carefully tilt it on the 3 axes and see if it freaks out or tries to fly away. And then if that works, I'll slowly raise the throttle to a hover, and I'll be fully ready to disarm if it flies away. And I'll, like, do it over a grassy field instead of an asphalt parking lot. Not that I test fly over asphalt parking lots, but, like, I'll put it at the end of my concrete pad, and I'll tilt it towards the grass so that if it freaks out and flies to the moon and I disarm, it falls in the soft grass and doesn't break. And then if it hovers, I'll do some throttle pumps, and I'll see if it behaves itself during the throttle pumps or if it tries to fly away or if it falls out of the air. And then I'll disarm, and I'll check and see if the motors are hot or going to smoke. And then I'll go take it out, and I'll gently fly it. And I'll see if it's behaving normally and not trying to freak out or fly away or fall out of the sky. And then I'll do some full throttle runs, and I'll see if the motors are hot. And I'll just slowly build up to more and more aggressive moves as I convince myself that it's going to be okay. I don't do every single one of those steps for every single build. But if I had a build I wasn't sure that it was going to be safe to fly, that's how I would approach it. Parallax says, thank you for a $5 super chat. Parallax, what makes a motor compatible with a prop? I have the T-Motor M1104, and they work great with Bi-Blade 3018s, but become extremely hot with wind dancers on 3S. So basically, Parallax, the issue there is how much load the prop is putting on the motor. And in general, the more thrust a prop makes, the more load it's going to put on the motor. A motor's job, if you generalize it, is to generate torque, to rotate something in resistance to some load. And rotating the shaft in resistance to the load is doing work, okay? So that load that's on the motor's shaft, it might be the weight of your car, you know, creating drag and friction and gravity pulling it down and inertia making it not want to move. That would be a motor turning the wheel of a car. The load on the motor shaft might be a pulley, and it's lifting a bucket out of a well, or it might be a propeller. And a smaller propeller or a lower pitch propeller is going to make less thrust, and it's going to put less load on the motor. The thing about hot motors is that it's a nonlinear effect, and I have to thank Chris Rosser for opening my eyes to this. It was the 8S build. I thought that the 8S build was just going to be a novelty, and I was just going to do it for clicks. It was fun to fly, and I saw that Rotor Riot got 100,000 views on theirs, and I was like, well, shit, I'll do it, sure. Why not? I'm going to get a lot of views, it's going to be fun to build, it's going to be fun to fly, sure, let's do it. But the actual discussions with Chris Rosser about 8S and the way that it affects heat buildup in the motors were so educational, and that to me was 100% worth the whole thing. So with a motor, as long as the motor has the ability to dissipate the heat that the motor is generating, everything is fine. As soon as a motor starts to be unable to dissipate the heat that the motor is creating, what happens is that the motor gets hotter, the magnets get hotter. When the magnets get hotter, the magnets get weaker. And when the core of the motor gets hotter, the magnetic field strength that the motor core can contain, I guess, I'm not sure how to put it, gets lower. Which means that you get this cascade effect where the motor gets hot, therefore the motor gets less efficient and weaker. Therefore, you work the motor harder, which makes it get even hotter. And so what you'll see is that With one prop, the motor's fine. It's dissipating all the heat that it's generating. Everything is fine. And you'll go to another prop and suddenly the motor is way overheated because you've crossed over in that cascade. That feedback effect is now occurring. So that may be why that's happening. BobTube wants to know, what's the difference between flying 6S with 2400 kV on a motor limit versus buying dedicated 6S motors? BobTube, thank you for a $5 super chat, by the way, Bob. I'm surprised you say that 6S motors are more expensive, though. Like, I don't think motors cost different based on their kV. If I go look at a given motor and I look at the 2400 kV version and the 1600 kV or 1800 kV version, I don't think they're going to cost any difference.
I suspect he means he already has them. Like, is it worth buying new ones?
I see. Good point,
also,
Plenty. See?
BooTube? Yeah. I don't know if you care about BooTube, not BobTube.
Oh, BooTube. Thank you. I appreciate that. See? I'm glad you're here, Plenty. Making the live streams better. He has the motors already. So the differences are subtle. And I also feel not entirely qualified to talk about them. What you're doing is you are taking a higher voltage and then you are using PWM to average it down to a lower voltage, which is not quite the same thing as just having a lower voltage. So I think that you're more likely to get desyncs. I'm pretty sure about that. But I think that, like, Ciotti did that for like a year and said it was great. So I think you could probably get away with it. I think it's worth a try. Well, yeah. Do like a 70% throttle limit. 2400 kV. What does that work out to? What if we went to like 1900 kV? 1900 out of 2400. That would be an 80% throttle limit. 1900 kV is perfectly reasonable for 6S. So just do like an... What's that?
He said motor limit the question, but well, just for clarity, motor limit, not throttle limit.
Motor limit, thank you. In the PID tuning tab, not the rate profile tab. I'd say do like an 80% motor limit. That'll take you down to about 1900 kV. And the thing is, the lower the motor limit, the more sort of trouble you're likely to get yourself into. But by limiting yourself to 80%, that's still a perfectly reasonable kV, and I think it'll be fine. Machine Head asks, what temperature roundabout is the performance loss threshold with the motors? That's a good point, and I don't know the answer. I'll bet you that Chris Rosser could show you a chart with a curve that shows the sort of magnet strength versus temperature, and we could look for the inflection point. That's interesting, but I don't know where that is. That's a very good question, Machine Head. Focus effort. Continuing our Super Chat bonanza. They're still coming in. We got a question here from Focus FPV with a $10 super chat. Are there many, U.S.-based companies making components and putting them together and other parts? I love Haisingi, but I want a U.S. alternative. Haisingi. The short answer is no. They do exist. For example, the Radix from Brain FPV. The Brain FPV Radix is fully assembled and manufactured in the U.S. The components come from China because that's where they all come from, right? So, like, the individual components may come from China, some of them, capacitors and so forth. But the assembly there is in the U.S. There are almost no, if not no, fully U.S. Like I don't know. I can't think of anybody making motors in the U.S. I'm sure that there must be somebody, but like FPV drone motors manufactured in the U.S. Can't think of one. It's pretty easy to make frames. You could easily find frames that are fully manufactured in the U.S. Cutting carbon isn't hard. If you extend it to Europe, if your goal is simply to avoid China, which I'm not going to I'm not going to opine on whether that is a good or a bad goal because I don't want to sort of encroach on topics that would just result in a lot of pointless arguing. But if your goal was to, some people have that goal, and I acknowledge that. There are some companies that are like European based. So like KISS is manufactured, or not KISS, FetTech is manufactured in Europe. Is Ultra also manufactured outside of China? I'm pretty sure FetTech is European. Not sure about that. I'm sure the chat will tell me. So if you extend it to the European market, there are slightly more options, but it's pretty damn hard to get out of China, frankly. So, BW, thank you for a $5 super chat. I crash into tree branches and drop 15 feet to the ground. Now when I plug it in, the startup tones are very weak and one motor won't spin. ESC, that's my guess. If all four motors are being flaky, then the ESC is the likely cause. Don't plug it in again, because I think you're at risk of frying a motor if you haven't already. Josh Goldberg, thank you for a $5 super chat and another $5 super chat. I'm new to analog, but I lose color in my feed a lot. I don't know how to troubleshoot beyond lots of caps. Josh, the first thing I would do is I would make sure you're on the right channel. The number one thing that causes that loss of color would be if you were on like you did auto scan. And if we look at an FPV channel chart, 1 second, let me find one. I'm just going to search for FPV channel chart and like find the first chart I can find. Oh my God, you're killing me. Give me a good image that I can freaking use. Shut the hell up. Give me an image I can use, please. Thank you, Oscar Leon. If we look at this channel chart, we can see that, for example, channel F1 is at 5740 megahertz, and channel R3 is at 5732 megahertz. They're very close. We can see that channel R2 is at 5695, and channel E2 is at 5685. They're very close. So a lot of times, if someone did an auto scan might lock on to E2 when you're actually on R2, and then you could have this problem. Now, if you're sure that you are on the correct channel, what else could cause losing color in the feed? I think, could it just be a weak signal? I mean, a weak signal will usually cause other problems as well. So, I guess my next question would be, does it happen when you're at close range? In which case, it's not like weak signal. Hopefully, these are some things that could be helpful. And of course, you're always welcome to email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com, if you want more, if you want to dig into it further. I Like Bananas. We're continuing our super chat bonanza. I Like Bananas says, thank you for €5. How do I stream video from the Goggles V2 with Vista to an Android phone? Vista V2. So for that, I think what you want to use is the... Let's see. What is the latest? To an Android phone, we would use the DigiView. Oh, this is the web version. We would use the DigiView Android app. So this app, when used with the V2 goggles and a Vista VTX, will emulate the DJI Smart Controller and allow you to get a video out. Yeah,
I would recommend you probably just use wide FPV. You can pull it up on your phone. It works on your phone.
Okay.
And that's
DigiView not working lately?
Yeah, DigiView did not work for me last time I tried it, and that's been the case for a couple other people as well. I'm not sure that it's maintained anymore, but I do know that wide FPV, I believe, is now maintained again.
Okay. All right. So alternatively, open your browser and go, and that works. It's not an app. It's just a web page, Plenty?
Yes, I loaded it up on my phone, though. I don't know if you can install it when you're on an Android or not, but I definitely did that to show somebody when I was flying out in the field here. So.
Okay.
Also,
so
for
wide
people that
FPV.
don't know, you will need an OTG cable to make that work.
Yes. Yeah, it may not work. It may work, I think, but it won't always work with just a C to C. I think it depends on the cable. I'm not sure about that. If it doesn't work, try the OTG cable. Like Bananas points out, does the OTG cable go in the goggles or does it go in the phone? Well, try it one way, and if it doesn't work, do it the other way.
Yeah, I think I put mine on the phone side.
Yeah. Okay. Goes in the phone, people are saying. It goes in both ends. No, that's not right. Okay. Okay. Also note that if you have rooted the goggles, there are sometimes this stops working. I can't remember if it's rooting that itself, if it's WTFOS, or if it's the MSP OSD plugin. But some combination of those things breaks this functionality some of the time. So the other thing is that if it doesn't work for you, the last step is try uninstall. Well, you shouldn't have to uninstall WTFOS. If you hold down the bind button, it'll bypass loading WTFOS. So hold down the goggle bind button on power up, and it should bypass loading WTFOS, and see if that fixes it. Hopefully that is helpful. Supernova says, with your QAVS frame out of stock, what do you recommend? I recommend you wait a couple weeks, you impatient SOBs. You've only been waiting 6 months. What's another 2 weeks? The new version is coming soon. Last I checked, it was in manufacturing. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that it's currently in shipping and almost in stores. Ooh, so exciting. I can't wait to tell you all about it. Or you could go to my webpage, fpvknowitall.com, where I have other recommended 5-inch frames. So, Fortune Cookie, thanks for a $5 super chat. M10 GPS issues fixed in Betaflight 442? No, I don't think so, Fortune Cookie. I believe it's 4.5 that will fix those issues. That's what I've been hearing. If it was fixed in 442, then it would be in the release notes. So that would be the actual way to answer that. But I think the answer is no. APN Films, thank you for a $5 super chat. When I try to do freestyle, like flying with my new Cinewhoop, it tends to freak out in the middle of a maneuver. Is this a tune issue or user error? Neither. APN Films. Cinewhoops are not great at acro flying, and many Cinewhoops, especially if they're heavily loaded with a GoPro and a big heavy battery, they will freak out in the middle of a highly aggressive maneuver. So it's that you have a Cinewhoop, I believe, is your problem. I mean, I'm not trying to overgeneralize or be flippant, but that it is true that, like, a lot of times Cinewhoops will deal really badly with prop wash oscillation, and they'll kind of and just kind of freak out. You can, if you are an experienced pilot and know how to kind of go easy on the sticks, you can kind of force a Cinewhoop to freestyle a little bit, but I am not surprised to learn that your Cinewhoop isn't responding well. The best thing you can do to get a Cinewhoop to acro better is to take weight off it. So if you're flying it with like a GoPro and a 1300 6S or something chonky, try flying it with no GoPro and a very, very light battery like a 1000 or 1100 6S and see if it does better. Cinewhoops are always sort of, the goal of the Cinewhoop is to make it as small as you can get it. And so they're always like really on the edge of what they have enough power to do. And as soon as you start pushing them hard, they hit the limits. One of the motors goes into saturation. And basically what I mean by a motor going into saturation is one of the motors is as fast as it can go. And then the whole thing has to sort of stop and fall out. Because as soon as one motor can't go any faster, the rest of the motors can't go any faster either. And basically limits the total amount of authority you can get from a Cinewhoop. Rvisual.cz, thank you for 500. Czech Karuna? Is it Czech Karuna? Ooh, thank you so much. 500 Czech Karuna. Appreciate that. Many people throw a drone into angle mode and just arm it. I've tried throwing it like this, but the drone never wants to arm for me. So very interesting question. You're literally talking about toss launches. I spent an afternoon doing toss launches once upon a time, and I found that I could get the drone to arm most of the time, but sometimes it wouldn't arm and I could not figure out why. So, if we're talking about the gyro thread, so the first thing that needs to happen is that the gyro needs to initialize. So you need to power the drone up and set it somewhere stationary so the gyro can initialize. If you are powering it up and immediately chucking it, that's probably why it won't arm, because the gyro hasn't initialized. So you need to hear doot-a-doot, doot-doot, and then there's another little set of blinks from the flight controller that indicates the gyro has initialized. And if you're not waiting for that second little set of blinks, then that's why it won't arm. The other thing is that I found that if I like winged it like a Frisbee, so it was just spinning really fast, it tended to not want to arm. So I would try to sort of launch it as gently as I could, right? So I didn't like whip it so it's spinning. I would try to kind of just huck it into the air. I don't know if that's helpful. So it was kind of rotating as slowly as possible, and then it would be more likely to arm.
Also, don't forget small arm angle needs to be 180. Like, so you need to have the arm angle, right?
Yes,
and then also make sure you're not throwing the quad and putting the throttle up before you hit the arm, because maybe you might instinctually be trying to push the throttle up. Those are both
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, so arm angle 180, that's true. I didn't even think of that. I overlooked that because it was like, yeah, obviously, if you're doing toss launches, you need arming angle 180. But no, it's not necessarily the truth that everyone would have thought of that. So good point. Thank you for Steve Tricks. And good point. Don't raise the throttle before you arm. Make sure the throttle's down. Very good point. Unfortunately, there's no way to test this except by just chucking your drone. And then sometimes it doesn't arm and it just falls and it bangs on the grass, and it makes for a really messy afternoon, I tell you what. So I would say try to rotate slower. Oh my goodness. You could tell when somebody's new here. Nodi says he only answers from donation. No, definitely not true, Nodi. We are currently going through a super chat bonanza. And then we spent about a half hour answering free questions at the beginning of the stream. Currently, we're doing a super chat bonanza, and then we'll go back to answering free questions. Or chat, tell him what he can do. If you don't get through on the live stream, what do I say you can do? I'll leave that to the chat. Let's hope they answer politely and correctly. You can email me. Steve Tricks, thank you for a $10 super chat. Can we remind everyone to stop taking the hobby so seriously? Stuff breaks, it's okay. Send it. It's true, although the time and money you spend fixing your broken shit should not be completely discounted. Steve Tricks, this is not okay. Steve Tricks says, try launching like this. I don't like you. Shut up. Oh no, it didn't arm. Did it not arm? It just fell. Oh my God. I don't think it armed. I did not see this quadcopter fly away. It just went foomp. Bad. Very bad. He says we both landed it. No, we landed it. It did arm. Okay. Okay. Thank you for 15 Malaysian ringgit from Alan Venrod, who says, this is a long one, but how would you diagnose a noisy quad? Extremely noisy gyro on fairly new quad. Alan, if you have an extremely noisy gyro on a new quad, frankly, my first thought is that you might have a bad gyro. And I hesitate to rush to the conclusion of bad hardware because I feel like it's a bit of a cop-out answer. Like, if every time someone asked me a question, I was like, replace the hardware. Like, I'm wasting your money and I'm not really doing my job to, like, try to help you troubleshoot the problem. But that assumes that you are a reasonably competent builder and you haven't made any glaring errors in your build, okay? So, and in order to get like really noisy gyro, I think you have to make pretty glaring errors in your build. So either you have problems with your build, like, is it a 3D printed frame? Is it a plastic frame and you're just not telling me that? Okay. So either there's something mechanically weird about your build, but like even mechanically weird builds usually will fly. And so if you have an extremely noisy gyro on a brand new build, potentially you've got a bad gyro. Is there more information in the troubleshooting forum? My Discord server has a troubleshooting forum, so people can leave troubleshooting questions and get answers. Just one more reason to become a patron. Here we go. Do we have what I really want from this is more? Can I full screen this, please? Can I full screen this? What I really want is more information. So Foxier S722 Mini, Reaper ESC, what frame? Rush Hussar 5. I don't know that frame, but it's probably fine. Hussar. It's a racing frame. Come on, don't do that. So like, yeah, I would love to see pictures of your build. Oh, here we go. Not a lot here, but like it looks like you know what you're doing when it comes to building. Like it doesn't look like, this does not look like your first build. Your solder joints look really clean. Your wires are neatly routed. It doesn't feel like you've made like like I can see that you've got silicone gummies on your ESC. You haven't done anything, you probably haven't done anything like inexperienced that would cause you to have crazy bad. So like, look, this is a relatively clean build. Nothing's touching your flight controller. And you have crazy bad gyro. I think you should replace the flight controller. And just see if that fixes it. You know? And here's the thing. Don't just throw out your flight controller. Maybe it's fine. But I feel like it's worth... Like, you're probably... Like, you're a racer, so you're probably going to build 2 or 3 of these anyway. So just take a second flight controller, swap it in, and see if that fixes it. Because you're going to potentially, you're like, yeah, but it's going to cost me $60 to buy a new flight controller. Okay, but you're going to spend 10 hours trying to bullshit around fixing this problem, and then in the end, you're going to replace the flight controller anyway. So, like, save yourself 10 hours, swap the flight controller now. If that doesn't fix it, then spend 10 hours troubleshooting it, and you've got a spare flight controller. That's my advice. And now I have screwed up the... Blunty is no longer getting the Discord because I went in the wrong window. Sorry, Blunty. Let me get back on the live stream chat. Now you're caught up. Continuing the Super Chat Bonanza. We were about 7 away from the end of the Super Chat Bonanza. Again, we're going to keep doing Super Chats until we catch up. And then we'll go back to the regular chats. It's been a half hour, and we may... Well, I said I would keep doing them, so I guess I have to. Jason Hine, thank you for a $10 super chat. What should I look for on the OG air unit that took a crash? It works, but it randomly reboots or loses video. This happens across multiple flight controllers. Okay, well, my first thought was that you have a problem with your voltage regulator or your wiring. But if you've changed the flight controller multiple times and it's still doing it, now I agree that it's an air unit problem. And I don't know, like... I don't know how to fix it, right? Is like the plug broken? I mean, the only way to service them, I just contact DJI and say, hey, I have a problem, and see if they'll fix it under warranty. Like, there are places that repair air units if you know what's wrong with them. Like, you have a broken antenna connector. I don't know of anybody who will, like, try to troubleshoot it, though. Like, probably it's something simple, like the plug got damaged and it's losing power. But how do you fix that? Joseph Dahari thinks the MIPI cable is the culprit. But the MIPI cable won't cause it to reboot, will it? I don't know. I guess it's worth. It would be. Did you use the same wires each time you swapped FC? If no, replace the wires going between the FC and the air unit. Get a new plug. And then people are saying replace the camera cable. I guess that's worth it because you don't want to throw out an air unit. Aaron Grows, thank you for a $10 super chat and another $10 super chat. Thank you for your generosity, Aaron. I have a Rush Ultimate Plus VTX at 800 milliwatts, and my signal gets distorted when I fly farther away. So far, nothing out of the ordinary. My JB FPV kit doesn't do this. Tried different antennas, channels, same problem. Any thoughts? Well, the JB FPV kit has lower than... Does it also have 800 milliwatts? I think what you're saying is your Rush VTX gets less range than your JB kit VTX, even though the Rush should have more output power. One thing you can do if you have the Immersion RC RF power meter is test the output power of the VTXs. The Immersion RC, this is a great use for the Immersion RC RF power meter. Now, it is like an $80 or $90 thing, and it is often out of stock. It is in stock right now. Shut up. Oh my God, the price has gone up though. It's in stock. This is a lot of money to spend on something that you will use, 5 times a year. But when you use it, it solves a problem. Like right now, you don't know if your video transmitter is putting out the power that it says it is. Well, this will tell you if you're in the ballpark of correct. Sure, you should check the antennas for sure. Like maybe you have a broken antenna. On the Rush VTX, also check the LEDs to make sure that the Rush VTX agrees that it is in 800 milliwatt mode. So like sometimes your VTX table would be messed up in Betaflight and you think you're setting it to 800 milliwatts, but it's not really going to 800 milliwatts. When the VTX has LEDs on the outside, you can check the output power that it thinks it's at.
Also, 2 more things I can think of is, isn't there like a race mode versus a normal mode in the OSD you can change? And some VTXs, I remember, I think it was RDQ VTX had that issue where you needed to swap between race and the other option in the OSD menu.
Race versus free will change whether you boot in pit mode or not.
Yeah, so maybe he's booting in pit mode.
Valid.
Right?
Valid.
And then the other thing would be if you have an extension, if you're using some kind of SMA extension or like a way to extend the antenna, you might make sure that extension is performing well versus the antenna or something else. You might not realize you're losing range from that extension.
Nice. Good point. Let's take a second and thank Super Deluxe for helping field questions in the chat. He's answering questions that I'm overlooking or haven't got to yet. And, my sort of mission in life is to answer all the questions. And I appreciate a kindred spirit. Thank you, Super Deluxe. The difference being that he's doing it for the love of the game and I'm doing it for money. And the love of the game. Thank you, Super Deluxe. Appreciate that. What's your opinion on people taking existing frames and putting their own twist on them? A friend and me are working on our own OS5 and not selling them. Thank you for €5, VKTR. VKTR, my opinion is that if you're not selling them and you're just making them for your own use or for your own experimentation and learning, I don't think there is any moral problem with that or ethical problem with that. I think that once you start selling them and competing with the original, potentially there are ethical problems, although I think that I wouldn't make a blanket statement that that is always wrong, but I do think that's where you start to potentially be in a gray or maybe even a not gray area. That's my opinion. As long as you are not competing with the original frame and devaluing the work of the original creator, I think you're fine. You're good to go. And I think most creators would agree with you. They would be happy that you're learning from their frame. Do you think Walk Snail is on par with the first DJI V1? Thank you for $2, Quad City Bay Area. Quad City Bay Area, if you mean that DJI on the day of release in August 2019 with 25 milliwatt mode and the very first firmware, I mean, it's been a long time, but I would say probably Walk Snail is on par with that. BooTube, thank you for a $5 super chat. At what point do I frame swap? Currently using a Darwin FPV 5-inch frame, but I'm considering doing a few upgrades. At what point do I swap from the budget frame? Frankly, budget frames often fly as well as more expensive frames, especially if you're not pushing the PID tune like to the limits. The place where budget frames usually fall apart is in their durability. So if you find that you're just breaking arms all the time and you've replaced the arm 5 times and you're like, okay, screw this, I'm done, that's the time to upgrade. Speaking of broken arms, hold on. Interesting that you say that. And by you, I guess I mean interesting that I say that, because I did. Hey, guess what? Oh, no! No! Fly fish! Fly fish, why? Why? Now, I know what you're saying. That's your 8S build. Surely you broke that in some spectacular crash. Unfortunately, I don't have DVR. So you would just have to take my word for it. I'd say I was at most 30 feet in the air. I'm thinking about the building I was flying over was a 1-story building with a roof. I was flying over the top of the building. I was probably 10 or 15 feet over the building. So I'd say I might have been 30 feet in the air. And somebody powered up and I lost video. And a fraction of a second later, I disarmed. It fell on concrete and asphalt. So, like, you know, it was a solid hit. I gotta say, I was disappointed. And, you know, hey, look, everything breaks. Maybe it was like a perfect hit. Okay? And, fair point, you'd rather have the arm break than the frame, right? Protect the electronics. Like, you can even see that the motor has a scuff on it. So, like, it was a fair hit. Oh, interesting. There's well, that may be from when I tried to turtle mode. That's hard to judge. But I gotta say, my gut reaction when I saw this was I was surprised, because the Volador is a heavy frame and it makes up for its heaviness with sheer durability. And I was like, I thought the crash, I was surprised that crash broke this arm. It must have been just like a perfect hit. There you go. I haven't actually had a chance to test if everything works. The motor feels fine. So I'm assuming everything's fine. I just need to replace the arm. 30-foot drop onto concrete. Yeah. Yeah, okay. It broke. Everything breaks eventually. I guess I'm just surprised. Like, what are these, 6mm arms? On a frame so renowned for its durability that the arms actually seem like, well, I don't know. Anyway, I need a new arm for my Volador. Gonna have to get that order in. We are nearly caught up on super chats. David Torres says, "Thank you for the great knowledge you push out," and a $10 super chat. Thank you, David, for those kind words. Sunshine says, "Thank you for $5, Sunshine. In CGI videos, it's commonplace now in high-end software to have FPV style effects, or is it still a choice of filmmaker? Example in live chat." I don't know. I don't know how common that is.
I reposted the video for you.
Okay, let's take a look. I'll mute this. So what do we got here? An FPV style, like a camera move. Oh, interesting. So this is CG, so the camera could do anything it wants. And they are emulating drone-style shots. That's really interesting. I don't think that's common. But this is clearly inspired by FPV-style camera moves. Maybe the pilot or the camera guy is Yeah, FPV moves. That's Sunshine's clip. Interesting. I don't think it's that common, but it's going to get more common. Black Rocket, thank you for 110. Turkish lira. Thank you for 110 Turkish lira. Now, my Happy Model Super B F4 Lite ELRS got really poor reception of only about 20 meters using your ELRS settings. Okay, my ELRS settings shouldn't affect your range like that, though. If you're getting reception of only about 20 meters, I would check the antenna on the receiver first. There is no combination of Express ELRS settings that should give you 20 meters of range. That's almost certainly a bad receiver or a bad antenna. Like nothing. You could be at 1,000 hertz at 10 milliwatts and you should still get more than 20 meters of range. So, yeah, that's probably bad hardware. There is a test. There's a test. I've mentioned this on live streams before, but in case you missed it, there is a test. If you go to this web page, expresslrs.org, quick start pre-first flight, and here is the bench test. I'm going to link this in the chat in case you're watching, and right there in the chat. And you can test and sanity check your hardware. Sketsix, thank you for a $5 super chat. Or Sketsix, thank you for a $2 super chat. Wait a minute. What are you doing? Blunty, is there anything else from Sketsix that's another question?
I didn't see. Okay, I did not see it. And you have another one after that, which I'm not able to type those characters in. I wasn't able to find how to copy it.
We got a €2 super chat from a, I think that's Greek. And we're not sure if you have a question asked. And Black Jungle, thank you for, we can't search because of the Greek characters, unfortunately, to find if you've asked a question. And then we've got Black Jungle, thank you for 5 reais, working on a Science-y quad here. For flight time, I am looking for big props, low pitch, and low KV. Yes, sir. The larger the prop diameter you can use, that's the #1 way to increase efficiency. Okay, and we are caught up on the super chats and can go back to the regular chats. And I'm just going to take this one right off the top. This question from Jimmy P, who says, I am new at this hobby. I will buy a Mob 6 RTF to learn to fly. Does the goggles work for myopic people, or how do you handle this problem? For the box goggles that come with the bind and fly kits, usually if I take my glasses off and I pop the lens out, if the goggles don't have a lens in them, it's no problem because you just put them, they're just like 3 inches from your eyes, so it's no big deal. If you're nearsighted, you can see. If you absolutely need glasses, sometimes you can fit your glasses inside the goggles, or sometimes you may need to actually like buy a very, very small set of glasses to fit inside there. But most of the time with the box goggles, they don't have a lens inside, so you just put them on your face and you're fine. Or if they do have a lens, you can pop the lens out, and that means that they'll work okay. What are the best props for a 5-inch, 750-gram drone? Choporo 200. There is no single answer to that. Right? It just depends, like, on what you're trying to do. Like, I think that most people would say a safe choice is something like the Ethics line of props are very good props from HQ. The Gem Fan, like the 51477, is like a solid all-around choice. But the best props, like some people would say, no, you need a 5.1-inch prop. Some people would say, no, a 4.9-inch prop is more responsive. And it really just depends on like what style of flying you're doing and other things. For example, if you live at 10,000 feet above sea level elevation, you actually will want certainly like a 5.1 inch prop and a high pitch prop, because the thin air at the higher elevation is going to make it harder for your motors to make thrust. You know? So there are various choices here, and there is no single best. But there are some good all-around recommendations, which I gave.
Also, just a reminder, props are cheap in relative terms to the drone, so it's not a bad idea to try to grab quite a few and see what you like.
Try different things.
Brandon Beans. Something people don't...
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Something people also don't consider is elevation actually matters too. It's 15% less thrust when you're a mile up. So like say you're flying in Denver versus sea level. So, you know, people might like props for those reasons too. Maybe they like more thrust because they're in somewhere that's higher or something like that. So.
Yeah, good point. Brandon Bean says, I use the HQ Prop R37 racing prop for freestyle. I actually also really like, is it the R37? Or is it the... this one, the R38. So I love these R38 props. I will go through a whole day of racing and not change these props, and to me that also makes them an exceptional freestyle prop. These HQ R38s, I think they need more credit. They're fantastic props. Like for me, durability is one of the major concerns. Okay. And Lucas Whitaker asks a similar question. And Lucas, I want to acknowledge your question and basically say it's the same answer that I just gave. Okay. Newt McFly wants to know, is it possible to put the Radiomaster boxer LEDs on a switch to turn them on and off? So Newt, the answer is no, but maybe yes. No is the answer because there is no, the Radiomaster LEDs, the gimbal LEDs, they just plug into a 5-volt output on the board. And there's no way to turn that, to switch that output. However, if you were to just sort of splice a switch into the wiring and install the switch somewhere on the radio, you could even cut one of the wires going to one of the factory switches, right? And then splice the power to the gimbals into that switch so you could flip the switch from external, or you could drill a hole into the case of the boxer and install a new switch, which you could flip to turn the gimbals on and off. It would be pretty easy to splice that into the 5-volt output, but there's no factory way to do it. Lord Hendricks wants to know, how many milliohms is too high in a cell? Lord Hendricks, you're asking about the internal resistance of the battery, and the problem is that the internal resistance of the battery depends on the size of the cell. So, for example, for an 1100 to 1300 milliamp hour cell, similar to what you would see on a 5-inch freestyle quad, a resistance of, let's say, less than 10 milliohms is pretty good. A resistance of between, say, 10 and 20 milliohms is meh, okay. And a resistance of over 20 milliohms is, I don't like that. That seems high. There's a lot of variables there. Those numbers are just rough guidelines. But my point is that those numbers would be completely different if we were talking about a 450 milliamp hour whoop battery, or if we were talking about a 5,000 milliamp hour Cinelifter battery, right? If we're looking at a 5 or a 6 or an 8,000 milliamp hour cell, we would see resistances down around like 2 milliohms, right? And maybe 6 milliohms would be, whoa, that's high. 6 milliohms resistance for a 1,000 milliamp hour cell is like, oh, that's really good. The smaller the cell, the higher the internal resistance, and vice versa. And so what you have to do is you have to build kind of a mental checklist of cell sizes and resistance based on the batteries that you use. And what I like to do is, if you really care about this, what you would do is you would build a spreadsheet. Ooh, it all comes down to spreadsheets, doesn't it, folks? That is what life. What was your life about? What is the secret, the meaning of life? You know, what's the meaning of life? And I'm going to be like, oh shit, wrong window. I'm going to be like, here it is. This is the meaning of life. Spreadsheets. So I would do like, you know, battery name. Let's see. Brand. Milliamp hours. C rating. Internal resistance. I don't know. Maybe there would be more columns. I'm not sure. And I'd be like, okay, CNHL. Stop it. CNHL, 1000 milliamp hour, 100C. And then you measure the internal resistance. Okay? And you put it in. 8.2. 8.2 milliohms. I don't know. I guess it would have to be average IR. Because, of course, you're going to have multiple cells. Okay? And then you start building this spreadsheet. Right? And then you'll start to have a sense, based on the milliamp hours, what's the internal resistance? What should it be? Now, I want you guys to notice that at no point did I talk about cell count. Because cell count is, the internal resistance is per cell. So if you have a 6S 1000 milliamp hour, the internal resistance of each of those cells is going to be the same as a 4S 1000 milliamp hour. Because they're probably the same cells. It's just in one case there's 4 of them, in one case there's 6 of them. Okay? All right. One more thing, and I always have to put this disclaimer whenever we talk about internal resistance. Ooh, Super Deluxe points out the spreadsheet should have battery weight on it. That's a good point. A lighter battery is potentially going to be like more desirable if it has the same internal resistance. When you measure internal resistance, the battery must be fully charged. Internal resistance will be higher when the battery is not fully charged. If you don't measure internal resistance at the exact same voltage, 4.20 volts per cell, then the measurements are meaningless. If you have high volt batteries, you should still measure them at 4.20 volts per cell. Okay? The other thing is that temperature matters. If you have batteries and they've been sitting in your hot car and they're all warmed up, the internal resistance will read lower. If you have batteries and they've been sitting in the cold, the internal resistance will be higher. So you have to temperature stabilize your batteries. Now, the way that I do this, I am fortunate enough to have air conditioning, right? So my house is usually about the same temperature, within a couple degrees. So if that works for you, then just bring your batteries in the house, let them sit for a couple hours, and then measure the internal resistance. But don't bring them in from a hot car and immediately measure the IR, because those numbers will not be valid. Okay. Killer Zebra says we need JB Livestream bingo. Remote ID, Excel, complaining about JB QAVS2 production delays, etc. Yeah. Thinly veiled Betaflight feature request. John Kerpusky wants to know, why do I have to rebind my ELRS receivers? They just randomly do not connect at times, and I have to go to Lua script and bind them. I'm not using model match. No clue. My first guess is that the hardware you're using is messed up and you should buy a different brand of receiver, but I'm not going to commit to that answer until you tell me what brand you're using.
My main suggestion would be use a binding phrase.
Oh, yeah, use binding phrases. Hey, Blunty, is it true that if you have a binding phrase in your module and you use the 3-plug method to bind, afterwards the binding phrase will be in the receiver?
I'm not sure. Captain Bry was in chat earlier. He might be able to answer that, but I have
Captain
not heard
Bry,
that.
are you here? He's gone. Hey, Blunty. Look at Sunshine's latest comment. This was one for you, Blunty.
Oh, yeah, HVAC.
HVAC. HVAC compressor. Air conditioning compressor. Blunty to come out and fix that for you. Blunty used to do HVAC work. I don't know. I just thought that was funny. Let's see here. Evan asks, when starting out on a sim, what style quad do you recommend learning how to fly with? Most sims will have put the most work into optimizing the flight characteristics of a 5-inch freestyle or racing drone. It depends on the sim. Like, there are some sims that are specifically tailored towards tiny whoops, in which case their tiny whoops are going to fly the best. If you're flying Velocidrone, they've thought a lot about their racing drones because it's tailored towards racing. So you'd want to pick like a 533 switchback. So I would but on the other hand, if you're flying DRL simulator, DRL will also have put a lot of work into optimizing the flight characteristics of the DRL Racer 4. However, the actual answer is you should probably fly what is closest to what you are going to be flying in the real world. So if you get the DRL simulator and you're going to be flying a 5-inch racing drone, don't spend all your time practicing on the Racer 4, which is a much bigger and heavier quad. It's going to feel very different. OTR Flyer. Did you get OTR Flyer's question, Blunty? I don't see that you did. I'm going to grab this question from OTR Flyer. OTR Flyer asks, why did you say in your 8S video that you need a 50-volt cap? Isn't 8S only 33.6 volts? So a 35-volt cap would be perfect, right? OTR Flyer, the rule of thumb is that you should have, well, the actual rule of thumb is a 2 to 3x margin on the voltage rating of a capacitor. So for a 33-volt system voltage, you would want at least like 65 or 70 volts on your capacitor, and ideally more. That's if you're designing like televisions and computers that need to last for 15 years. Like, we push that margin a lot. So it's common to run like 6S with a 35-volt cap, even though that doesn't give you much operating margin. But in general, I don't like to be right at the cap's voltage rating. So if I have a 35-volt cap and I'm running a 33-volt system margin, by the way, it's actually not, that's not even the right math, because 4.35 times 8, no, 35 volts. It's right at 34.8 volts is a high volt battery. It's right at the operating margin. I don't like it. So I like to have a little headroom. But, I mean, you can get away with it. Bobby Baggs wants to know, is there an FCC hack for O3 if I update my O3 in the USA? I think, Bobby Baggs, if you just do the ham unlock on the O3, you'll be fine. Just do the ham unlock. By the way, we are going to do one more Super Chat Bonanza before the end of the stream, so if you do have a question you want to make sure I get to, we currently have like 30 messages in the queue, so we will not be getting to all of these messages in the next 30 minutes. The stream will go for another half hour. If you do have a question you want to make sure I get to, leave it as a Super Chat now, and currently there are only 2 Super Chats queued. We will be clearing those out before the end of the stream, so unfortunately, we have more questions than we can get to. Let's take this question from Gawoon Ryan, who says, is a capacitor really necessary? Because it's hard to solder sometimes. You can get away without a capacitor some of the time. In general, it's always a good idea to have one. And if it's hard to solder, then you should try to be better at soldering. Respectfully. Anytime I find myself thinking, I know this is the right thing to do, but it's hard and I don't want to do it because it's hard, then I kick myself in the balls and I say, that's your sign that you need to fix this situation. Right? I mean, assuming that it's a skill that I feel like I should have. Like changing the oil in my car is a pain in the ass. I can do it, but I don't want to. And so I take it to the shop and they do it for me because they, you know, it's $25 and they can do it, whatever. They can do it faster, easier, and I just don't want to do it. Okay, but when it comes to quadcopters, the ability to solder is not really optional. You need to be able to solder to be able to just be in this hobby at all. So if you're going to be in this hobby and you find yourself thinking, that's really hard to solder, I don't want to do it, kick yourself in the balls or the ovaries, as it were, and get better. Time to get better. Okay. So I don't mean to sound dismissive. Just be like, get good. I don't want to sound rude or dismissive, but I do kind of want to give you the real talk that I feel like is called for.
Morton wants you to know there's no Ciati today. I don't know if you knew
okay.
that.
Yeah, he's working today. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, great. All right. Belevstov Victor says, please help after installing iNav firmware on my, I guess it's a GEP RC flight controller. One of the motors is beeping like when the power is connected. Just one of them? My guess is you flashed the wrong target. Like, why would only one of them be beeping? What's the beeping sound like? Yeah. I feel like we need more information. I feel like there's missing information here, but my first guess is that you have flashed the wrong iNav target for that flight controller, and so some of the outputs aren't set up right. You should probably email me. Oh, Vic is in the Discord. Vic, post in the Discord a video of what it sounds like. Can you do that in the next 5 minutes? If that's possible, go ahead and post it. I want to hear the beeping. Okay. Black Jungle wants to know, do you know any way to make turtle mode gradual? Sometimes I want to make it slow, not just blip it. Thank you for $5 or 5 reais, Black Jungle. Black Jungle, the output of turtle mode is proportional to the deflection of the sticks. If you want it to go slower, deflect the stick less. Black Jungle, here's a trick. Ooh, this is kind of cool. If you really care about this, Black Jungle, set up your radio so that when you activate turtle mode, your pitch, roll, and yaw axis also go to 50% rates. Huh? You could even put Expo on it, Black Jungle. Think about it. As soon as you flip turtle mode, not in beta flight, in the controller, you have 50% rate and maybe some Expo, and that'll let you moderate it slower. But here's the thing. People ask this question. They're like, turtle mode, why can't it be more gradual? It is directly proportional to the deflection of the stick. You're just deflecting the stick too hard, too fast. So if you want more control, that's a great... I'm going to make a video about that. That's a great idea. I have to make a note about that so I don't forget. Very seldom I have... Very occasionally I have a video idea that I'm like, oh, I gotta do that. Where's my phone wet? I don't like that. Video ideas. Okay. Edit. Turtle mode, dual rates. That is kind of cool. I mean, that's kind of silly, but kind of cool. I think it's gonna. That video will get at least 100 views. Okay. All right. Why did the number of super chats go down, Blunty? Blizzard FPV, thank you for a tuning for Bardwell. Oh no, Black Jungles was also a super chat. I see. All right. It does not look like we're going to get a rush of super chats before the end of the video, so we will continue to answer the regular chats. Fantastic. Sickbird wants to know, is the iFlight Zing 2 2506 1500 kV motor a good choice for an 8S build? Sickbird, the kV is perfect. You didn't tell me your prop size, though. For a 5-inch prop, 2506 is overkill. It's not bad. It's not like, especially because the additional weight of the 2506 motor is going to be somewhat offset by the 8S 1500 kV having more power. Like it seems like one of the whole points of 8S for me is that you can have a heavier quad without noticing the weight quite as much. So, so I think if that's the motor you choose to go with, it's not a bad idea. If you're doing 6-inch props, that motor is perfect. 5.5-inch, that motor is pretty good. 5-inch, it's a little overkill, but still fine. Okay. Fortune wants to know, is a cap on the pigtail less good than a cap directly on the pads? Yes, but it's better than nothing. And sometimes that's all you can do. Super Deluxe. Super Deluxe. Where's Super Deluxe's question? Hang on. Clear that. What does that mean, Super Deluxe? Oh my God, didn't sell out. He laughed at me and said the internet is crazy. Thanks for $5, Super Deluxe. I have no idea what you're talking about. Blunty, do you know what he's talking about?
Nope.
Okay. Well, it's good to know that Oh my God didn't sell out, at least as far as Super Deluxe stands. Monkey D FPV. Thanks for we got a couple super chats trickling in. Thanks for a $5 super chat. I have a Flywoo analog Baby Nano 2S. I unlocked the VTX, but it's not staying unlocked. First time in setup showed Tramp in the ports tab. Any ideas? Well, Monkey D, I think that Tramp is correct for the Baby 2S. Hang on. I actually have a setup video, and I can double check that. Haha! I'm glad I made this setup video once upon a time. So, where's the ports tab? Do I have any video of the ports tab? Arm mode. Angle turtle beeper mode. Configuration tab. Come on, baby. Analog video setup. Do we have anything from the ports tab? Analog video. Okay, this will do. What can we see the VTX table? Here we go. Yeah, Tramp is correct. Okay, just confirming Tramp is correct. Well, Monkey D, when I got them, it was Tramp. I'm lucky that this is the analog one, otherwise this wouldn't have worked. Oscar Liang's post mentioned it was Smart Audio. Mine was Tramp and it worked. I don't know if it's changed, but I can tell you that my analog one from, a few months ago, this was in 7 months ago. Okay, that was a while. I'd be surprised if it changed, but here's the thing. If it's going into pit mode, it could be going into pit mode because you have the wrong VTX table loaded, and that can cause some VTX to lock themselves into pit mode. Black Jungle 308, thanks for 20 ray eyes. A quad with a hamster ball leg frame and fully caged props for making sure I can navigate through super tight spaces. Sure, this is a thing people have done before. Unsticking it from places with launch mode makes sense instead of turtle. No. The point of launch mode is to pitch to a certain angle and stay there. I think you would want turtle mode. Or maybe 3D mode. I don't know. Adamos Anatolitis wants to know, can you let me know how to charge the Radio Master 1600 milliamp hour for Boxer? You put it in the Boxer and you plug in the USB port in the bottom of the Boxer. The Boxer has two USB ports. The one on top is for data. The one on bottom is for charging. It has a built-in charger. You don't need to take it out to charge it. Just plug USB into, and by the way, if you have a quick charger, it will fast charge, so it'll do high output, high voltage. That's how you charge that. Tom Ziboril wants to know, is there a simple way on the Tango 2 aux channels to program the momentary switches to switch between two values? Yes, absolutely. In fact, I made a video about that. Tom Ziboril, this is the video you want. Your trim switches are useless. Let's fix that. This is the video you want, Tom, and it will tell you exactly how to do what you're trying to do. I cannot find you in the chat. Interesting. I don't know why I can't find you. Maybe you've left the chat. There's the video you want, though, Tom. Super Deluxe wants to know, why is it acceptable for manufacturers to make flight controllers that blow 5-volt rails in less than a week? That's not acceptable. Almost every high-end brand I've tried, flight controllers are so fragile it's almost like it's on purpose. So Super Deluxe, this is one of those times where if you didn't know me, you would think I was a real asshole. And if you do know me, you would know I'm a real asshole. Super Deluxe, you've blown the 5-volt rail on every high-end flight controller you've bought. Maybe it's you. I don't know why. I don't know what it could be. But I have not had that experience. I can't think of the last time I blew a 5-volt rail. Like, I mean, I can think of the last time I killed a flight controller, but like, you buy a new flight controller and in less than a week the 5-volt rail died. That experience does not seem common to me. And so, since it's happening to you repeatedly with multiple manufacturers, just by sort of deductive reasoning, we have to wonder if like something about you is causing that. And I don't know what that would be. Like, what are you running off the 5-volt rail? Are you overdrawing the 5-volt rail somehow? Don't know. Oh man, this again. Really? I commented a while ago about making a remote on-off, and you said a 100 to 200 amp MOSFET would be too big and expensive, but look at the iFlight anti-spark filter. Is the iFlight anti-spark filter a MOSFET? What does it do? That's the answer to your question. What does it do? What is it, and what does it do?
I suspect it cuts off. I mean, the MOSFET is rated that high, but I suspect it cuts off before it pulls all that amperage. Maybe it actively sits with that amperage the entire time, but to me it looks like it flips off once it initializes. Because that MOSFET there, I've already looked up, is a 300 amp 80 volt MOSFET.
Is it rated to switch 300 amps?
That's what it says.
So could we then theoretically switch all of battery voltage?
I'm not an electrician. No idea.
You looked up the data sheet though.
Yep. I suspect it's like actually not loading, but I don't know. I mean, it says it's rated for it, so.
That's interesting. I mean, if it is in fact a 300 amp, I mean, I'm skeptical that this PCB would take 300 amps for very long, but I mean, okay. 300 amp, 80 volts. Well, I'll tell you what, let's do. No, they're not going to answer. iFlight's not going to answer that question. They're not going to answer that question. If this MOSFET is truly capable of carrying 300 amps and switching it, then perhaps it could be used as a remote on-off switch. I'm surprised to find out that something that small can do that, but perhaps that's the thing that we've been looking for. If that's true, then that's the new correct answer. But I'd like someone to demonstrate that for me before I commit to that answer, because that would surprise me.
The battery must go through it, but it doesn't mean it continues through it. Like, I mean, I guess it does the way it's set up, but I mean, if that MOSFET has different like legs and
I mean, the MOSFET has to be able to cut, because what happens is the MOSFET is initially open, you plug in the battery, and then the MOSFET closes sometime after you plug in the battery so that you don't get the spark. Right, Bunty, presumably?
I guess. I'm not sure. I just don't know.
That's my guess. At that point, the MOSFET is never actually switching between open and closed under load. It just stays closed. Although theoretically, if it's a 300 amp MOSFET, then it's what's the part number? I want to see the data sheet. DC05AA.
No, you want FDBL0150. That's how you can find it. Yeah, N80.
Yeah, I found it.
Okay.
Let's look at this data sheet about this MOSFET. Ooh, we started with Excel spreadsheets, and now we're looking at electronics data sheets. So it's funny to me that you would run all of battery voltage through a MOSFET, because, like, the internal resistance of the MOSFET is also going to, it'd have to be really low internal resistance. How much is this part? $10 volts, 80 amps, 1.1 milliohms. How much voltage are you losing through the MOSFET? You can't. Why would you run VBAT through a MOSFET? You're going to immediately lose, like, well, I mean, isn't it? How much voltage lost through the MOSFET? Drain to source voltage, 80 volts. This is interesting. People who are better at looking at electronics data sheets than me, I hope you're also digging into this and seeing if you can find interesting things. On resistance, 1.1 to 1.4 milliohms. That's fine. Turn on a source to drain diode voltage. So is this the voltage loss through the MOSFET? Are we losing 1.25 volts through this MOSFET all the time? That doesn't seem like that. That wouldn't work. DerV points out that we run VBAT through MOSFETs all the time. Yeah, no, obviously in the ESC. So there's going to be minimal voltage loss. Is it really rated for 300 amps? Bastian Sonderman points out 110 millivolts at 100 amps. That's reasonable. That's not that much. It's only capable of 400 watts. Aha! Mr. Huggy points out that it is only capable of 400 watts. 429 is the actual number. And then we have just package stuff. So if it's only capable of power dissipation 429 watts. So if it's only capable of 429 watts, that means it cannot be carrying the full load of a 5-inch mini quad, because they'll exceed 1,000 watts easily.
You think that's is that like with no cooling? because it says TJ25C. So I wonder if that's like...
Oh, that's power dissipation. Is
yeah,
that,
like it can only
heat dissipation due to internal resistance? That's not power through the FET. See, unfortunately, I don't know enough about reading this data sheet to sound more intelligent. We need people in the chat who are... It's not the same as the power it could handle. Okay, thank you. That's where I was going. That's only the heat dissipation within. So how many watts does it dissipate? Is that internal resistance times amps, power squared? 1 volt at 300 amps is 300 watts. Okay, so it's no. It's got a huge power dissipation. The question we're trying to answer is, can this MOSFET literally switch battery voltage arbitrarily? That's the question. Here we got the math for 1 DFGA. 1.1 milliohms when on. I squared R at 100 amps is 11 watts at 100 amps. That's nothing. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. How much is it? How much is this darn thing? That's the short answer. It does look like this can switch battery voltage. That's a boring answer. Oh, hang on, no. No, I just want to buy it. How much is it? $5. That's not bad. So, okay. So, Blunty, the question has been, why can't anybody build a switch that can switch battery voltage, blah, 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 so you can turn the power off remotely? And the answer has always been, oh my God, have you seen how big a 200 amp relay is? And then people say, why not use FETs? And you say, no, it's too expensive, it's too big. But here we've got a $5 FET that seems to be able to handle the power and switch 300 amps. So has the answer to the question changed? Is it now, okay, well, that part exists? I mean, we don't know, but it looks like maybe so. Interesting. Thank you for pointing that out. 1DFGA JAK392. I'll file this away. You know? Like, it seems like you could build a circuit board where the FET turns on when you plug in the battery, but you can override that with a signal from the flight controller and power it down. Or a signal from the ESC, or from the receiver. Very interesting. Cool. Thank you for pointing that out. Let's get the last couple of super chats out of the way before we finish up the stream. Happy Sunday from Tolo. Thank you for a $15 super chat. Louis P. Floyd says, thank you for $5, Louis. Just saying, thanks for your hard work. Thank you for your donation, and thanks for watching. How long until the Insta360 Go 3 review? Thank you for $5, Focus FPV. So here's the thing. Insta360 didn't send me one to review. I'm not mad about that. Like, I never, like, nobody sent me, nobody. But, like... So what that means is that I didn't have a video on release day. And now there are 57 million videos out from everyone and their brother, at which point I'm like, oh, good. Yeah, I feel less excited about reviewing the product if everybody and their brother has already reviewed it and I've missed the bonanza on release day. So, like, I don't know if I'm like gonna now rush to spend a few $100s buying it and then review it, only to be a month late to the party and have no real insights that haven't already been given by other channels, and get fewer views. So that's a tough one. Mr. Huggy asks, if you switch the power off from the flight controller, how do you switch it back on? The way it would work, in my imagination, Mr. Huggy, is that it's a one-way trip. So if you flip the aux switch, the flight controller... You're right. You need some kind of latching. You need like a latching... You need like a latching semiconductor relay. But it would just need to be signal level. What it would need to do is once the input goes high, the MOSFET turns off and then stays off until it's power cycled.
Yeah,
But as soon as it cuts off, the latch would immediately reset because there would be no way for it to distinguish between cutting the power. Oh. Okay. The latching circuit would need to get power directly from the battery so it could tell when the battery was unplugged.
Yeah, you run the wire just like they run it on the spark thing.
Unplugging the battery resets the latch so the FET is able to close again. I think that's a solvable problem. Joshua Pierce, thank you for a $5 super chat. I'm flying below 400 feet and a private-owned plane flies over the river I live at near 7,500 feet above the water. Who's in the wrong? Joshua Pierce, it is always the responsibility of the SUAS operator to see and avoid manned flights. That is the FAA's position. And I want to say, sometimes when I say what the rules say, this is a legal question. This is a regulatory question. Sometimes when I say that, some people think that I am endorsing that position, that I am in favor of that position. People say, do I have to register my drones? And I say, the FAA regulation is that such and such has to be registered. And they think that means that I'm like in favor of regulation because I didn't say, you don't have to register them and you shouldn't register them. And anybody who registers them is a... Blah, 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 blah. You asked, do I have to register them? I assume what you mean by that is, does the FAA expect me to register them? And I answer the question that I assume you're asking. That's so for the record, that's where that answer comes from. The FAA's position is that unmanned SUAS drones, quote unquote, are always expected to avoid manned flights. So if you're flying at 100 feet and a helicopter comes in between the trees, boom, and buzzes by and hits your drone, the FAA's position will be that it was your fault for not seeing that coming and getting the hell out of the way. Now, this is tricky because, there are situations where a low-flying aircraft, especially a helicopter, could come into view, even assuming you, have a spotter whose head is on a swivel, who's listening and looking and listening to a radio. There are situations where a low-flying aircraft, especially a helicopter, could come into view before you reasonably could possibly have gotten out of the way. At which point, F you. You better have your ducks in a row, okay? And you're going to go, the FAA is going to be like, hey, why didn't you get out of the way? Your job is to avoid manned flight. And you're going to be like, look, I had a spotter. They were on the radio. They were looking around. This helicopter came around the hillside, and I had 3 seconds and look at my DVR. There was just nothing I could have done. And the FAA is going to go, oh, I really want to find a way to make this your fault. And you better hope they can't find one. But if you're an FPV pilot with your goggles on and you're just tooling around over the lake one day and you don't have a spotter because, right? And you're just like, derp, 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 derp. I'm fine. I'm at 100 feet. Everything will be fine. And a freaking airplane comes along and hits you. You better hope, you better get the hell out of there and hope nobody knows who you are because you're gonna get hung out to dry. And the thing to keep in mind, as Big Data points out, is FAA regulations allow manned flight at low altitudes under certain circumstances. Okay? So just because you're below 400 feet does not mean you can assume that there will never be a helicopter or an airplane flying at that altitude. There absolutely are situations where they're allowed to fly at low altitude. And Slaughter Bartfast says, yeah, but low altitude flights are supposed to be over unpopulated areas. He's not supposed to be below 500 feet in an area where you're at. Yeah, okay, good luck. Good luck. Whose side do you think the FAA is going to take? The manned general aviation pilot who says, with all his certificates, who's like, well, I was flying over an unpopulated area at an altitude of 432 feet AGL, and this drone was in my way. Yeah. Yep. And you're going to be like, but sir, I was just flying my drone. It's just fine. It shouldn't have been here. And they're going to hang you out to dry. So, Cali FPV, thank you for a $5 super chat. What's your thoughts on dynamic damping? I pretty much see the default or off. The only difference I see is in motor heat. Callie, many people turn off dynamic damping because it makes PID tuning simpler. The fewer dynamic things there are, the more straightforward it is to PID tune because you're just removing variables. Dynamic damping is very difficult to tune if you don't have Blackbox, because it's very difficult for you to know if the D term, it's very difficult to even know what the D term is doing unless you're looking in Blackbox, and most people don't go to the trouble. So most people either run the defaults or they turn it off completely. On many of my quads, I just run the defaults and I'm happy. If I'm going to PID tune a quad, I would turn it off. And I would just try to find the right D gain for my build. Steve-O says, thank you for a $10 super chat. We are past the 3 o'clock when I would normally cut the stream. Scotty is not streaming today, so I'm not taking his time. We're going to keep going until we finish the super chats, and then we're going to be done. So if you want to see the stream, keep going. Leave super chats. Otherwise, we're already over time. Steve-O said, thank you for a $10 super chat. I'm trying to squeeze in some viewing at work. I tried using external Blackbox with Betaflight 442 and had issues. It works with 440. Is that a known issue? Blunty, is there an issue like, he says external Blackbox. I assume he means an SD card reader on a UART. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's what he means. I haven't heard of any bugs like that. You can always go on GitHub on issues if you type in, just for anybody who doesn't know, if you want to find out if there's an issue and you don't want to have to ask, you can always go on to GitHub. GitHub can be a little scary for a person who's never been on GitHub, but you can just type into Google Betaflight GitHub, just like Bardwell's doing here. You click on Betaflight, and then you go up to the top there and you can click issues. If you click issues, and then I typically delete open an issue so you can see if it's an old issue as well, or a PR has been set to fix it. I typically delete issue as well, and then you just type in there whatever you would want to do. So I would say probably Blackbox and look for something posted in the last little while.
Yeah, there's a lot of Blackbox related. Oh, Blackbox functionality missing on 441 on the Omnibus F4 target.
Oh, a couple other things to remember, and I doubt this is the case, but 4.4 obviously has builds. I would assume it builds the same, though, between 4.40 and 4.42.
He says it's working on 4.40, so it's not... Is there a thing he could have done here? Is Blackbox a feature that needs to be selected, or is it always enabled? I think Blackbox is always enabled, isn't it?
Unless it's a special chip, I think it's always enabled. He's doing external, so I don't think that matters.
Yeah. And for external, it's just going to be in the ports. It's been a long time since I did external. It's going to be in the ports tab, and then is it under peripherals? Yeah, Blackbox logging. All right, we don't think that there is a known bug that's causing that, and I don't see anything here.
And also, there's a Betaflight has a Discord, so you can always go ask over there if you're not sure. The other thing I would make sure you do before you ask them is just dump 440 and flash 442 again, and make sure it doesn't work on 442. Because I've seen quite a few people like, oh, there was a bad config where I pasted a diff and now it doesn't work, but it turns out you actually just needed to reflash fresh and then try it, and the fresh flash you did to 440 fixed it. You know, that
Don't
sort of
paste.
thing.
Oh, I see. When you flashed back to 440, you wiped your config and it changed the thing in your config that was causing it not to
It's
work.
possible.
And so if
yeah.
you now go forward to 442, it may work again too.
Yeah. It's worth a shot before you report it as a bug.
Yeah, fair. Any plans yet to do a Hot One stream with Blunty asking you questions? If not, there should be. I mean, I'm always down to... That Hot One stream was fun. It was painful. It was fun, and it was definitely lucrative. People like to see me in pain. I don't know, Blunty, you feeling like Sean Evans?
We could do that. I'd be down for that. But I'm sure it'd be easier for you not having to manage
Field the
juggle
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I really wish there was somebody, I don't know. No offense to you. I'm sure you won't. I'm sure you're not gonna take offense. I wish there was somebody like who could really craft. Like Sean Evans' team crafts amazing questions for the interviewee. And like they're always like they're so insightful, and it's like that's the experience I want. I want Sean Evans to interview me. No offense to you, Blunty, but he's special. I want someone to look at me the way Sean Evans looks at his guests.
Really, it'd be nice to do it in person. You know,
it would.
Like
I had the idea to do it at Rampage, to do like a Hot Ones flight up on stage. Not just me, but like anybody else who wants to do it. And like take questions. But again, the key is the questions have to be really good. If it's just a Q&A when I eat hot wings, that's good. It's fun. I mean, it's not the same.
Fortune also points out he has a team of research people doing questions. So.
Oh, sure. No, I have no illusions that like he personally is. No, he's a great interviewer, and he has a great team.
Fortune says Nardwar with wings. I like that. That's a good one.
Damn right.
That's
damn
accurate.
Right. Unfortunately, he's gotten so big that like my chance of getting on Hot Ones as like a vague YouTube like E-tier person, I don't know, zero. Like he's actually Hot Ones has far outgrown my popularity, so it'll never happen. So I'm gonna have to find a way to make it for myself. But yeah, I've been thinking about how to make like a Hot Ones kind of thing happen at Rampage. I don't know the exact format, but I'm down for Hot Wings. I don't know the question that I want everyone to ask me. That's the beautiful thing about it, is he asks questions that the audience is interested in that the guest, wouldn't have thought of. Anyway, I feel like I still have a chance at Joe Rogan, but only because he like streams every day, so he just needs fillers sometimes. Anyway, got a question here from Black Jungle. Vic RJ on Discord, his flight controller is rebooting. Check the vid. Oh, good. We got that. Vic, where's the vid?
I relinked it here for you. If you click, it should take you up.
Where? In Livestream chat, Plenty?
Yeah, I just clicked. I put a link, and if you click it, it should jump.
Where'd you put a link? In our chat?
No, in Livestream chat, there's a link. If you look at just under my name there, you just click that.
Oh, thanks, Plenty. Thank you. I see it now. Thank you, Plenty. Oh, good. I'm glad we got back to this. I said if you post this, and then was it 5 minutes? Was it within 5 minutes? Like, I didn't really go back to it. I appreciate you. So let's see if we can hear that. Can we hear this? I hear no sound. Am I wrong? I'm not hearing any sound. It is rebooting.
I can hear the sound on my side.
Why don't I hear the sound?
You have Discord tab muted because you didn't want notifications. Is that right?
Fuck. That's true. That's good. Okay, that's fine. I can bring up the Discord, like the actual Discord window. Okay. Is this, wait, is this the person with iNav where the motor was beeping? Is this the same guy? Vic RJ?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, this is a power issue or a bad flight controller. This is not a motor issue. This is a bad. I mean, step 1: desolder everything from the flight controller one by one, and see if the issue stops. And then I think it's a bad flight controller. Desolder. Don't desolder the motor wires. That's not what's doing this. But like this shenanigan, I don't know. I don't think it's a soldering issue, but that's where I would start. I think you have a bad flight controller. Did it only start happening after you flashed iNav? That would also surprise me, because the fact that it's beeping on the doo-doo-doot, that's the ESC initializing, and that has nothing to do with the flight controller firmware. So this is a power issue. You can also see the receivers turning on and off, which if the flight controller was rebooting via software, the receiver wouldn't power on and off. It would stay on. So I think you have a power issue, and I feel like a likely conclusion is a bad flight controller. Sorry, I know that's not the answer you were hoping to hear. It's an all-in-one, isn't it? You can't unplug the flight controller from the ESC. Confessor, it is possible to do a real pit on the DJI O3 Air unit. Just bear in mind that the real pit itself is rated for 1 amp max, and so you will need to be under 1 amp, or it won't work right. You might burn out the real pit. Continuing our extended live stream, as long as we have super chats, Fortune Cookie says, I'm using WTFOS. Sometimes when booting my goggles, the OSD loads in an SD format. I have to reboot the air unit and goggles to fix. It loads in an SD format. Does that mean, are you talking about custom fonts? What does that mean, Fortune Cookie? I'm not sure I understand what SD format means. I would say upload the latest, the version of WTFOS. You know, Blunty, you just said if you keep super chatting, he'll stay. But it occurs to me that I'm also paying you hourly to be here. So if I don't get at least your hourly rate in super chats, I'm actually losing money. Hey, got to do what you got to do, though. Clay Francis. So hang on, go back to this question. Fortune Cookie, I don't entirely understand your question, but go to the FPV WTF Discord. They can help there, and make sure you're on the latest firmware on your goggles and your air unit, just on principle. Clay Francis says, I have an issue with the SBF7 mini flight controller. I updated to 4.4. When applying defaults, I lose USB. I downgraded back to 4.2.11, no gyro. GitHub Betaflight issue 12922. If you downgraded back to the original and have no gyro, I think that probably you flashed the wrong target. The SBF7 mini, I don't know. Speedy B,
Wait,
I see.
When did BMI get added? And when did ICM 4.2? Isn't there a couple gyros that aren't supported on older? But I guess the target would match, probably.
I'm surprised the Speedy B F7 exists in 4.2.11. That surprises me. Let's just check on that. Firmware flasher. Speedy B F7 Mini. It's back in 4.2.11. I wonder if he has the Mini V2. You see there are two versions. The Mini V2 also goes back to 4.2.11. Hey, I wonder if these two have a different gyro, the Speedy B F7 Mini and the Mini V2, and you flashed the wrong one. That sounds like that's a plausible guess. So try flashing the other one. Does the Tango 2 have more tension feel than the Zorro, Quad City Bay Area? I don't think I can answer that question. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Especially because they both have adjustable gimbals, so you could tighten them both up. Clay Francis says he used both of them and still no luck. I mean, no gyro. Did you apply custom defaults? I mean, I assume you did. What about 4.3? Try 4.3. Any thoughts on streaming games? I do that sometimes for fun, but... Okay, folks, that does it. We have caught up to the super chats. Fuck, we got another one?
Yeah, one more.
Let's see. Tolo, happy Sunday. No, we got these. Oh, Morton Erickson says, I have a Radio Master Boxer, which I'm not getting comfy with. Is Tango 2 worth a try? Only if you fly Crossfire. If you intend to fly Crossfire, then Tango 2 is worth a try. If you don't fly Crossfire, in my opinion, then I would pick a different radio. All right. Are we caught up now, Blunty?
We are caught up.
All righty, guys. Thank you guys so much for staying with me. We will see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. for the stream. Thank you, Plenty, for helping out. And we are out of here. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.